So we're in a series called Inspired, and the series is all about how to read the Bible well, in particular how to read the Bible through the lens or using the hermeneutic of Jesus. Jesus is what unlocks the story of God for us and helps us go back through our own lives, through our history, through the scriptures, to uncover the God that is revealed to us in the Christ. And this week we were looking at mythology. And myth is sort of a difficult word for some of us sometimes. We're not used to using this applied to the Bible, and that can make us a little uncomfortable. But my argument here is that when we get past that, and we actually allow the Bible to speak to us on its terms, with the genres and language that it chooses for itself, with the stories that the community of God have gathered together and preserved for us, we actually find a lot of beauty there. And this is one of the ways you can think about this. When you read a children's tale to one of your kids, you probably recognize a lot of really important lessons, a lot of truth in that story. But you don't expect that story to speak to you with the same precision or the specificity of a science textbook. In the same ways, you wouldn't expect a science textbook to speak to you with the creativity, with the intrigue of a novel. And yet you recognize all of those different ways of writing, all of those different genres speak about something that's very true to what it means to be human. Our children's stories, our fables, our science textbooks, our novels and stories and movies that surround us and speak to the human experience, all of this is true, but it comes to us in different ways. And this is the same with the Bible. When we try to take the Bible and condense it down, squash it all into one way of speaking, what happens is we miss out on the beauty and the diversity with which the Bible speaks of God. And this becomes really important because no one way of speaking, no one language, no one perspective, no one genre can capture the breadth and the depth of the divine. And so when we only read myth, we get this very narrow picture of God. When we only understand history and the people of God and that story, we get a very narrow picture of God. When we only allow didactic teaching like Paul's writings to speak to us, we miss out on the beauty of God that we find in poetry. And all of these different genres, when they come together, give us a more well-rounded picture of the divine where we see God from all of these different angles. There's the beauty and the wisdom of the Bible. That's what happens when we take the Bible on its own terms in the ways that it chooses to speak. Now, sometimes when I talk about myth, people automatically assume I'm talking about a story, a made-up fable, something that doesn't have anything true or anything grounding to it. But here's how I would answer that. I'm going to argue that the most true things you will ever read in the Bible, some of the most true things you will ever encounter in your life, are the parables of Jesus. In fact, what makes them so true is their ability to transcend the particular moment and speak to us just as clearly as they did 2,000 years ago. And yet we know that those parables, as true as they are fiction. They're made up. They didn't really actually happen. They're not historical events. They're not objective accounts of something that happened in the world. They are true statements about how the world operates. They are true statements about what it means to be human. They are true statements about how we encounter the God who loves us deeply and comes to us in Jesus. And we don't discount them at all because we know that this is a way that Jesus teaches and speaks and communicates truth to us. Well, the same thing is happening all throughout your Bible in all kinds of different genres, and each of those genres have their own language game, their own rules through which they use to communicate. But the more you allow all of those different ways of speaking, all of those different ways of truth coming to you, interacting with you, and changing you, the more you will encounter the beauty and the depth of God who is around you, speaking all the time. And so even if these words, some of these ways of reading are a little uncomfortable, my hope is that as you lean into it, you will encounter more beauty, more fascination, more intrigue with the text of the Bible, more ways that you see ancient scriptures and ancient stories pointing you to the revelation of God that we see in the Christ.